Hello everyone, tonight I've got a video. It's a little different than my usual train videos. I am a collector of autographs. I've got different posters and smaller individual autographs from celebrities and stuff. And some stuff I find online, sometimes from different dealers and so on. Whether it's sports or movie or whatever. Anyway, I came across a listing on a Facebook buy-sell trade, and I began to look at it, saw the different items that were being listed, and it wasn't going for a very extensive amount. And I began to look at the descriptions and was reading the details that the seller had, and I began to feel like he didn't really know what he was selling. So I wanted to kind of help him out. I have a little bit of a background in doing that, and also in reading signatures and stuff and trying to decipher who's who. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what we did today in trying to help this guy out. And then if anybody's interested, by all means, I'm not trying to make a sale here or anything. This is for somebody completely different than me. And but by all means, if you're interested in it, I'll put the information up and you can try to get a hold of him and see if maybe he can ship it to you. Alright, so just stay tuned. This one started it off. It was actually on the Facebook site, kind of sideways, and once I clicked on it, it kind of gave other pictures. One of the notes that I would have, if you're going to be a seller or whatever of kind of memorabilia, especially if it's autographed stuff, make sure you take really good pictures. You kind of detail as much as you possibly can that you know of the listing. But when you take your pictures, make sure you be careful of the angle that you take them, careful of a flash, just to make sure that you take the best quality pictures. The second picture was this one. As you can see, the flash is right over the chest area and elbow area of the subject matter. Gets a little hard to read some of the letters when you have kind of a black and white kind of image that are already starting to kind of go, maybe exposure wise is starting to go, but then the lettering right around this area right in here, you've got a darker pen going into a darker colored jacket of some sort, and it gets just a little bit harder to read it. Here's our next one. This one gave us a little bit of problems, which I'll talk a little bit about, but there were some clues in here that did help. You've got a lot of writing that's in here, the individual who was made out to, but what we ran into, and I'll have a closer shot in a little bit, but you've got the name right in here, and right there was the beginning of the last name, and it's smudged, and so it's really kind of hard to figure out who this is without that information. It does have a date on it, that did help as well. And let's go to the next one. Our next subject. Again, we've got another autograph here. Exposure is kind of down over here, or flashes over here. It looks like some paper loss. To me, this looks like maybe this was sitting in between other prints. Paper was up against it, and possible damage into those areas. You know, when these things are stored, sadly many of them are stacked. There's nothing in between them, and if there's humidity or anything that's or it's exposed to kind of extreme temperatures and stuff, sometimes the pages will get stuck together. This one gave us the most trouble. Not only is this, you know, the flash is just all over the place, it's a darker image. I think there is some exposure issues, that it's starting to get double exposed. It was a very dark image, and the writing was also really dark, maybe with a black pen or and such. Looks like it was torn at the top. Actually, kind of looks like maybe these were stapled into some kind of book. Each corner has kind of been tattered a little bit, possibly when they tried to pull it out of whatever said book it might have been in. Our last subject that we have here, again, where's that flash? Right in the eyes. Kind of hard to be able to tell who the person is. Obviously, we've got a nice clear signature that's there, but it'd be nice to be able to see what we're looking at. And again, these are just pictures that somebody took with a camera, maybe with their phone, of the individual images and then shared online. Now I'm going to show you some of the images, starting with this one, that the seller sent kind of close-up shots and or different shots that avoided the flash as bad as it may have been. Alright, so this is the second shot. Much better with the flash. You get a really good image of the face. Even if you don't know who the person might be, you might be able to find after you find out their name, there could be 30 of that particular name, and so you're going to have to go through, maybe cross-check and look at face and see if the face kind of matches up and see what characteristics they may match up. So I asked them to take a closer shot of the signature. Here's the closer shot of the signature, and we kind of looked through, and this was one of the signatures that was somewhat easy to make out, but there was still some kind of uncertainty with the last name. The first name, you kind of get a G out of this. This possibly could be a Greg or a Gary or something like that. But later on, kind of found out that this was Guy, just Guy. Last name kind of presented a little bit of a trick, because you look at you got an R, looks like an O. Right here, couldn't tell if that was an F or maybe a B or something. And then it looks like maybe an ECKON or a TON. So it got kind of hard to be able to tell that up a little bit, and so you have to do a Google search and try to figure out names that are similar, that are close to it. You also might be able to take a look at other words, sincerely, and you might be able to kind of dissect how the person wrote different letters in that and how that reflected down into the unclear areas. So what we discovered, or what I discovered, was that last image was a guy by the name of Guy Robertson, and here's what he looked like a little bit later in life. Lived from January 26 of 1890 all the way until March 19th, 1960. Looks like he was actually an actor. He had a few roles. This is off of the IMDb page that he has. But kind of an interesting little autograph that this person has. So as I said earlier, this one kind of started us all off. The signature itself was pretty clear. They were all, and pretty much all of the signatures were all made out to a Mr. or Mrs. Millard Allen. Don't know who that person was. But this was one that was made out, and you get kind of a name of Martinelli. The first letter might be G. And it's just first glance, looking at that, not knowing who the person is. What I later found out was that our autograph was of a Giovanni Martinelli, and he was a Italian tenor. This is off of Wikipedia. He was an Italian tenor that was in opera. And we found out that a lot of the autographs that this person had collected were operatic in nature. I guess somebody would come into town and they would get a autograph. They'd go to a concert or whatever, or performance, and they would see them and then somehow get an autograph afterwards. Or even back in the day, some people would go and just simply write to these individuals and ask for a signature or something as a memento, as a souvenir. Martinelli even made it into different movies. So this was probably one of the more famous autographs that this guy had. I believe that's him right there. So I messaged the seller and kind of gave him some links and just trying to help him out. Kind of gave him some insight to who the individual, the first image was, and then just simply asked, kind of giving him the offer that I could help him if he wanted. And he was very, very thankful and provided additional pictures. So next we go into this one. And again, it's made out to Millard Allen. It says souvenir of, and then it has a name. And the name, again, the kind of fancy penmanship that's there, possibly either one, this person may not have signed it, may have. Sometimes this assistants or loved ones would actually sign them for them if they, especially if they were really, really famous. And even some had what was called auto pen. But if you take a look at this, you have a very beautiful penmanship that's here. And two different names, and it's dated 1935. So looking at this one, I ran into a few things that kind of troubled me. Again, I don't know anything of who this person is. If there are people out there that know him right away, great. But I'm looking at this, and the first thing I'm looking at is, the first letter here. I've seen fancier script, and so I wasn't too sure, was this going to be an F? Is it a J? Is it an S? Is it a G? There's all kinds of different options here. But then you start looking at other letters and how they sign other letters here. It can't be an S. You take a look at, here's an S. You know that this is souvenir, so that's definitely an S. You start looking at just the way that they write other letters, and you kind of narrow things down. So we found out that this, and I'll show you a close-up image also of what the buyer sent. Again, just a close-up shot of the signature. And we kind of deduced that this was a G. But then we get into the last name, and we're not too certain. Is that going to be a P? We've got a D. We know that from this letter up here. This D and this D are very similar on how he does the arc at the back of the D. Back of the D. And this also cut off part of a dotted I that was at the end of this. So these are, clues to be able to take a look at. And here's what we found out. We found out that this was a Giacomo Spadoni. And if I'm mispronouncing the name, I do apologize. But he was an operatic conductor and a voice coach to a few famous operatic singers. He served at the Met and at the Chicago Opera Company, and lived from 1883 to 1960. Alright, so the next one that was on the list was this one, and for the most part, this one didn't give us too much trouble except for the last couple letters in the name that kind of run into the darker coat of the individual. Let's get a close-up shot. Here we are with a close-up shot of it. It says, "To Millard, all good wishes," and then sincerely, and we believe that the first name is George, and the last name, I believe, is Razil, or Razil, but here's what we found out about him. Sorry, I said that wrong. George Rasley. There was a L-Y at the end of it. Again, this is off of Wikipedia. But we've got another person, again, kind of in the opera subject matter. He was a tenor in operas, concerts, musicals, and so on. Kind of a listing of things. He was on Broadway and so on. Born in St. Louis, that's where I'm from. And just, again, another person in that field. Now we start getting into some of the ones that gave us a little more trouble. So this one in particular, I'll give a close-up shot of the signature. Again, you have to Willard Allen, or Mildred Allen. And then you have a kind of blurred signature. We're not really certain about this signature, but there are a few clues that are in here. The first name we're kind of thinking is either Hal or Val. The last name is where it's tricky. The first like 1 or 2 letters is gone, completely smeared off. Maybe if I had this in person, I might be able to see it a little bit. Maybe the paper might be indented a little bit. That might give it away. But the last name is a kind of a shorter name. I would say maybe 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 to 6 letters in length. The last of the letters, last 3, look like an RDY. But underneath it gave a few other clues. The first off, it has another line here that says Muni Opera Team, or at least that's what I believe it says. The Muni is a theater that's here in St. Louis, an open-air theater. It's been around for over 100 years, and they've had a lot of different people and celebrities and stuff that have come here. So looking at that, and then also has the date, 1930, I went and researched and found that they also had kind of a few operatic productions that happened that year. Right now I'm kind of waiting to hear back from them. I've messaged them to find out if they have anybody from their alums, I guess, their alumni celebrities and past cast members and such, that could maybe shed a little light on this and find out who this person was. Our last subject gave us the most trouble. So you've got a really hard picture here that I believe was really dark, and so the seller was trying to take a picture to kind of brighten things, and I think their flash pretty much just made it worse. But it's a dark image. Gentleman that's smoking a cigarette. The bottom right corner is where the signature is, but again, kind of hard to see. Might be able to make it out. I don't know if you can make it out. To me, it says maybe to Millard, something wish, maybe sincerely, and then the signature, maybe a date. So I asked the seller, if he could take a better picture and send it to me, and this is what was sent, and maybe something in that area of the signature. So this is what was sent, kind of getting down into that bottom corner, and again, very hard to make out what was actually there. According to the seller, it was a very dark image, and there was black pen on black picture. But to me, it looks like, again, it says opera underneath it. Kind of a longer name, maybe starting with an R or an S. Looks like it may have sincerely above it, and possibly a date at the bottom. Again, can't make it completely out. So, if you know who it is, then I'll again show the image of the face. But if you know who it is, maybe make a comment or try to contact the guy and find out. That's what he looks like there. Kind of going down into the signature. There's a few things here now that I'm recording it that pop out a little bit more than what I could see without the recording, but it's still very hard to make out. Anyway. Alright, little wrap-up video. Today I had a great time working with the seller. They were very, very nice, and they were very appreciative of the work and research that I was able to give them. They've got a great collection that's here. It's from the 1930s. This stuff, if you're interested in choral or opera or going into Broadway and such, this would be great items that would be on the wall. I don't know if they're the real thing. I'm just looking at pictures off the internet. I haven't seen them, held them, or anything in my hands to be able to know. And these are all things that if you were really interested in them, you might want to consider doing before just simply making the sale. But I am sure that probably the seller would be interested in shipping these to you if you were interested. When I looked at them, you know, I kind of was reminded of doing genealogy work, taking old documents and trying to decipher the handwritings and stuff. I do have an interest in the signatures, or in signatures in themselves. I love great penmanship, but in terms of the area that these were from, I'm not buying them. Not because of any flaws or anything like that, but just simply it's not my interest for my collections. So, but again, a really interesting collection, and I do hope that they go to a good home. So I hope you liked the video. Hit like and subscribe, and I'll have other videos, some dealing with trains, some dealing with other kinds of things all over, things that interest me. So please stay tuned. Hit like and subscribe. Thank you again.